This is a video long time coming. Hey YouTube, Gundam here. Welcome back to Space Engineer. Today I'm finally going to show off my Paltek class super heavy battleship carrier. Now, technically this is a Paltek 2. The difference between the 1 and the 2, the shields that are on the main body have been modified, and you see that red line there? That entire back section was added on from the Paltek 1. Alright? Just saying. So, for the sake of making it easy, there are weapon systems that are color coded. Yellow, well, some of them, not all, some of them. Yellow are concussion missile turrets meant to shoot down enemy fighters. Red are laser cannon turrets meant for fighters or small craft. Green are turbo laser turrets. You know what a turbo laser does. Then there's still octuplet batteries. The Imperial 2 had 8 of those in total. There's concussion missile launchers meant to shoot at ships. There's these, which are supposed to be heavy, enhanced, rapid fire laser cannons. They're like small Gatling guns. These are your ion cannons. These are rotary blasters, which are great at shooting down missiles, small fighters, area saturation against fighters. Now these are supposed to be dual turret. Okay, well, dual turret. They're supposed to be 2 guns. One on the left, one on the right, but there isn't something like that in Space Engineer, so yeah. These are mass drivers. They're supposed to be rotary mass drivers that fire 20mm rounds at 10% the speed of light and fire a significant number of rounds per minute. This is a dual-barreled 6-inch gunned mass driver that fires at 10% the speed of light, but it's 6 inches in diameter, so it's going to leave a mark. These are enhanced, not just regular enhanced, by the way. These are enhanced heavy turbo laser turrets, dual barrels each. And these are enhanced further with kyber crystals. So the dual enhanced heavy turbo laser turrets, further enhanced with kyber crystals. Heavy proton torpedo launcher turrets. If you've played Star Wars Republic Commando, you get to see one of the torpedoes. These can launch 8 torpedoes at a time, and then they reload. These are supposed to be high-end shield leech systems, of which the Keldabe Battleship in Empire at War contains 1, and this thing has a few. These are heavy beam cannons. Think of the Republic gunship, but way bigger and enhanced with kyber crystals. These are heavy octuplets and enhanced with kyber crystals. Shield generators, we'll get to that in a second. I couldn't put everything on this because, yeah, Space Engineers has limits. Now, the 4 that you see here are super turbo lasers. Think of a turbo laser, but nastier than even a heavy. Way nastier. Forward firing only. And then these are hypervelocity guns. Again, Empire at War. 1 HVG salvo can annihilate an Imperial 2 or an MC-80. And this thing has 2 guns. Now these super turbo lasers are enhanced by kyber crystals, 1 each. They're pretty deadly per shot, good rate of fire actually, and they have the kyber crystal. So yeah. So the ship is supposed to be just over 6,500 meters in length. The top and the bottom are not completely symmetrical, but I'm going to do my best here. The ship has over 1,500 laser cannons, 70 concussion missile turrets, 96 of the rotary mass drivers, 58 of those enhanced dual heavy turbo laser turrets, 6 shield leech units, 272 octuplet batteries. Yeah, 272. Remember, the Imperial 2 only gets 8 of them total. 272 on this thing. 712 turbo laser batteries, 5 heavy octuplet turbo lasers, 64 ion cannons. Now, there are 152 of these total units, but one pack of 6 is equal to 1/2 of a Victory Star Destroyer's missile barrage out the side, which I have some video in some mod somewhere. So yeah, there's 152, so divide that by 12, and you get the total number of Victory 2s that this thing's equal to, for those alone. It's actually pretty nasty of a system. 30 heavy torpedo turrets, 126 rotary blasters. Get out of the way. 28 of those enhanced heavy rapid-fire laser cannons, these things here. 4 super turbo lasers up at the front, 2 hypervelocity guns, 2 heavy beam cannons, 24 tractor beams, 5 heavy tractor beams, and 82 external shield generators, but there's also internal shield generators. This ship can actually survive if it's a one-on-one fight with both this ship and an executor sitting at optimum range for the executor. Just the ship, not any fighters or anything like that, just the ship. Optimum location, optimum range as far as the executor is concerned, not as far as this thing's concerned. So the executor has the best chance to win. Against the Paltek 1, the executor would win. The Paltek 2, on the other hand, because of the shield enhancements, and although it has more guns, nothing in the back can hit it. It's just the missiles that are added that can hit it. So those against an executor will do some damage, but it's mainly the shield enhancement that the Paltek 2 will become victorious over an executor class. Yeah, that's a lot of turbo lasers, isn't it? And yes, this thing has hangars similar to a Venator. There are 4 big doors. The 2 ones in the back are bigger than the 2 in the front. There's multiple large hangars, multiple heavy weapon platforms. You can see shield generators all over the place. You can see now, I'm going to tell you right now, the area there and there, the bridge units, they're not to scale. In fact, a lot of the stuff is not to scale. The shield generators are to scale. The beam cannons are to scale. But the octuplets are supposed to be half the size. This is a 2 scale Imperial 2 Star Destroyer. And the octuplets are supposed to be half the size, okay? They're not. Yeah, look at this broadside. Only one of these guns is able to fire to the front. Now, all of those can because of that step system, but only one of those can fire to the front. Same with one of those. So, the rest have to fire to the side. There's a lot of firepower wasted against the target to the front. This thing's actually good against all directions. Yes, that includes the back. And again, remember, if that's an Imperial 2, that's a big bridge, isn't it? Except for that's not quite the bridge. Look at the back of this thing. I mean, all those octuplets you can see there. That's a lot of guns that are kind of wasted, aren't they? Unless you get around the side. And yes, there are some of those heavy cannons right here with missiles. Ion cannons, torpedoes, missiles again. And a lot of laser cannons to shoot at enemy fighters. This ship comes equipped with a heavy cloaking device that's better than anything you've ever heard of before. It comes equipped with a gravity well generator. Where did this hole come from? I don't know. Oh, wait. I don't know what happened there. My bad. But if you know my channel, you know I do that repeatedly. I was trying to make this perfect. Look at this. This is the back. That's a lot of guns that can't shoot anything in the front. Up and back. Yeah. But why is this here? This is why. Oh yeah, there's several guns there. These are why. Those are shield generators. There's some of the shield generators hiding in the back. If you don't get anywhere near them, you gotta go past the Octupa battery after you get around the whole ship. Good luck at that. This massive dual heavy battery here. All those laser cannons and turbo lasers to finally get into there and try to shoot at some of those shield generators. Is it possible? Sure. Is it easy? What do you think? Now, this is the port side side hangar. And yeah, a lot of the ship is similar to the bomb, but not quite. Obviously. There's the main reactor dome. Now, by the way, this is something that's a big question. Hypermatter. Hypermatter is pulled from hyperspace and used to power hyperdrives and hypermatter reactors. Now, legend says that ships use a very large amount of fuel every single second. How can that be? Unless hypermatter is a poor energy source. It's just very abundant. But a bad idea overall. There's a gun moving up there. Yeah, it's a poor energy source. This ship has kyber crystal and other crystal enhanced antimatter reactors. The ship was actually designed by a species that actually invented hyperdrives. Well, first thing, basically, if you go to the past, oh yeah, just take a look at this. Look at that. The front ones can shoot something to the front, but the others cannot. And that's the hangar. Besides it being guarded by octuplets and this, you're not getting into that hangar without a fight. And here's the other hangar. Yeah. Yeah, the bottom of this thing is nasty. But yeah, basically there's a species in Legends that over 1 million years ago invented the first hyper space travel and were wiped out. This is what I'm saying of it. Some of them survived, because you never truly wipe out all of them. Some survived. They managed to go hide themselves, and for the next 1 million years had peace and were in their hiding and had pure scientific advancement for over 1 million years, until pirates trying to run from an Imperial commander happened to stumble across them. The Imperial commander saved them, and they thank the Imperial commander by building him a new ship, because his was damaged beyond repair. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't this the main bridge? Looks a little odd. No, it's not. This is the flight control bridge. The primary flight control bridge to handle its vast array of fighters. This is the main bridge. Besides the fact that it's heavily guarded and pulled back in, remember Executor at the end of Return of the Jedi? Yeah, that's not going to happen here. This is the main bridge. Now, the bridges are actually to scale for the interior, but not to the ship, obviously. This window should be 3 blocks, and not even that high. This whole thing should fit well within there. Alright, that's the main bridge. That's the fighter control bridge, the flight deck bridge, number 1. Why number 1? Now, Imperial ships have more than one bridge. The problem is, they go down. Remember Executor? That's because they aren't really manned, except in an emergency. These are always manned. This, to scale, is an Imperial 2's top section. It just has a couple extra shield generators that's bolted onto the back. So that is actually an Imperial 2's bridge section cut off and strapped to here to give you an idea on scale. Okay? This here, by the way, that bridge is just there as an observation post or as an emergency backup if all else fails. This here is the secondary flight control bridge, not the main bridge to the control of the ship. This controls fighters as the secondary bridge to do so. That all the way over here, behind the forward hangar. This is the secondary ship bridge. And as you can see, the windows are highly reinforced. But more important than that, the whole thing's on the bottom. Why is that important? And it's almost an entire Star Destroyer length further back. Why is it important being on the bottom? No other ships do that. Well, almost. The Rogue One, anyone? Yeah, this ship has its hangar bridge on the bottom, and they're permanently manned. They'll literally take over within about 3 seconds if another bridge is taken over. Alright? It's on the bottom in case there's a problem. In case you really, really, really want to shoot at the ship, to confuse your enemy, you put the bridge on the bottom. Because no one is expecting the bridge to be on the bottom, not a backup. You'd think that's the bridge. You're wrong. That doesn't actually seem like it. That one does. That you would figure that out, but not on the bottom. It'd be pretty difficult for you to check. And yes, there are quite a few guns around the engines. Now, speaking of the engines, well, in case you can see, there's a shield generator hiding back there. Here's an Imperial 2, alright? The secondary engines, well, actually there's the primary engines, the secondary engines, and the tertiary. There are 8 tertiary, 6 secondary, and 10 primary. The 8 tertiary are improved and bigger versions of an Imperial. They're actually the same ones used on the Allegiance class battlecruiser. The Allegiance is twice the size of an Imperial. The main hull of this thing is about 3 times a little bit bigger. But yes. So the tertiary engines are those of an Allegiance. But that only has 3 engines. It's literally just an Imperial 2, way bigger. Twice the size. So this has 8, where an Allegiance has 3. Now the secondary engines, these 6 little ones in there, those actually have some pretty decent output. But you're more interested in the primary engines, these 10. Each one of these is equal to 1 engine on the Executor. The Executor has 13 engines. This thing has 10 of those engines, plus 6 mediums, and 8 light, for this thing. And it's a third of the size of the Executor. Actually, it's about a fourth the size. So it's a lot lighter. And the engines are slightly enhanced. So this thing's quick. This number 1 and the number 10 engine are turned off when there's a ship attached. They're turned on here because space engineers. But what happens if there is an Imperial 2, or rather the standard complement being an Imperial 4, not Imperial 2 or 3 or 1, a 4 attached, which is much heavier. And I have to design it, but starting with 5 octuplet batteries and a significant number of laser cannons and rotaries to shoot down fighters. So start with that. But, well, 5 octuplets per side, excuse me, so a total of 10. At any rate, that's just the top. The number 1 and number 10 engine are turned off, and there's a big ship dragging and slowing it down because of all the weight. How fast can this thing go with the engines on this thing turned off, obviously, and number 1 and number 10 engine turned off? It's almost as fast as a CR-90 Corvette. Now what happens if you detach the 2 of them, which there will be one on the other side, and turn these engines on? The thing can outrun TIE interceptors, A-wings. It can outrun most things. There's hardly anything that with sublight speed is slower. And this thing can outrun the Millennium Falcon at faster than light speed. But remember the what is it? The Empire Strikes Back. The Millennium Falcon was about that big. If probably a little smaller. So that's the Millennium Falcon. And this thing can outrun basically anything at sublight speeds. Yeah. Oh, and it has a gravity well generator. That is a size 4. The Immobilizer 418, the interdiction cruiser that's in Star Wars Rebels, that has 2 size 1 and 2 size 2 generators. The Dominator, which is an Imperial Star Destroyer with 4 gravity wells attached, has 2 size 2 and 2 size 3. The Paltek has a size 4. What other ship uses size 4? In fact, what ship uses 10 of them? Eclipse. Star Wars Legends Eclipse Super Star Destroyer has 10 size 4. This is only 1, but that 1 is better than 2 Dominators, which is why I wouldn't bring Dominators. I would bring a pair of Imperial 4s. Doesn't need them. Now you see this weird red and blue pattern down here. That actually shows the red pattern there. That's where it would attach. In case a Paltek 3 wants a modification, like another section, but you don't know. And yes, the color coding of the guns and of the ship is just there for making it easier for a video, and if you want to do it in an Empire Wars game here in Space Engineers. Now, why do these outboard engines have these black lines around it where the others don't? Thrust vectoring. 15 degrees in any section, any direction, as long as they don't burn the ship. 15 degrees. This thing can turn. This thing, without dragging anything, with the number 1 and 10 engine on, can outturn a CR-90 Corvette. And it's faster than TIE Interceptors, A-Wings. So, yeah. Now, what the heck are these? Well, that actually is a Viper. My friend suggested it. I'm gotta work on that eventually. These are 2 scale. That is one of my Katarns. That's it with the wings forward and the wings up as well. So it folds. That's important. That's very important. Or rather, this is it during folding. Alright? It's very important. You'll see why in a second. Now, this other one here, does this look familiar by chance? It should. It really should. You see it at the end of Empire Strikes Back. There's one in here as well. 2 scale Nebulon B frigate. Now, how did it get in here? It angled. They just rotate the thing with one of those heavy tractor beams and then pushed it out. Yeah. They angled and turned it, really. But yeah, that's a Nebulon B frigate. And it does fit, by the way. I didn't just expand it for the sake of getting that in there. Now, why is the folding wings of the Katarn important? Because this ship is designed to hold 8 of them. There's one here, but you got that room. You have this room. 2 there, 2 there, and this is port side. There's also the starboard side. A total of 8 Katarn 6C versions, of which I haven't built yet, can fit inside and can rapidly deploy. Excuse me, did I say 5 heavy tractors? I think I meant 7. Yeah, I just checked my paper. I meant 7. Sorry. There's 2 in that main bay, 1 there, 1 over there, the other bay, and 1 in the forward bay. Alright, so 2 for each of those bottom main bays. And then 2 for each of the side bays, and 1 in that forward bay. Oh, that's so many guns. I wish Space Engineers would allow me to smooth it out. All these angles are killing my FPS. I've got a pretty good computer too. Limitation of Space Engineers. So yeah, the guns are not to scale because Space Engineers. They need, the octuplets have to be half the size they are. And there is no rotary system that has 2 guns, one on the left, one on the right. But other than that, yeah. Now, What's this thing's capabilities other than what I said? Well, like I said, for the shields can take a massive beating. In fact, the shields are so strong that the Paltek 2, excuse me, not the 2, the 1, the Paltek 1 can take 2 shots from the Eclipse in anti-capital mode and survive. The Paltek 2 can take 3 shots, actually a little more than that, and in fact can actually take the Eclipse's maximum power shot. Not only surviving, rather, but without, you know how they say switch shields to double front? You don't need to do that. With either the 1 or the 2 to survive what I said, the 2 or the more than 3. And the maximum power shot from the Eclipse, the Paltek 2 can survive it without adjusting where the shields go. So if you do adjust them, well, and by the way, that means no hull damage, by the way. No hull damage. The shields will still be operational slightly. But there will be no damage to the ship itself. And the Eclipse in its maximum power setting isn't enough. So if you switch shields double front, you can take a lot more. Now the shields. The shields, as I said, there's 82 external generators. Those are Imperial designed. But there's a second layer of shields. The Acclamator had multiple layers. This thing has more than one layer as well. And the next layer is actually the Mon Calamari shields. Take the Imperial 2 and the MC-80. You see how those shields work? Alright? Now, take that, and if the Imperial 2 has 2 generators, and this thing has 82 generators, then how many would the Mon Calamari be? You know, if there's the 1 Mon Calamari ships, that's quite a few, 41 MC-80s of a high-end type, stronger shields, stuck inside there. All those shields are enhanced. But there's actually a different type of shield, a reinforced shield, for a third layer. The reinforced shield layer is the beast mode. High-end recharging while taking damage. It deflects a lot of the incoming damage. It prevents all projectile impact, including from asteroids and other ships. The reinforced shields are also the ones that allow it to take damage from high-end beam weapons like super lasers from an Eclipse or a Death Star. So yeah. By the way, the Eclipse in full power is better than you see the Rogue One Death Star does in either of its shots. That was not anti-continent mode. That was more anti-country. More heavy, big city area and stuff. Surrounding region. So yeah. Now, what about the complement? Because the fighters in this thing are ridiculous. 1,600 TIE Conquerors. Those are my own design. 2,600 droid TIE fighters. Over 400 landing craft to get the ground troops down. That green there, by the way, is the middle of the ship to help. Alright, over 400 ground landing transports. 80 Lambda shuttles, not included in that 400. 20 of the Lambda's variant, that's the cargo variant, also not included in that number. The 400 are actually modified Republic gunships. High-end versions of them. Alright? High-end versions of the Republic gunship. And the cargo version. The ship... Yep, there it is. The ship also contains hundreds of small craft for boarding enemy ships. Well, about 100 of those. But it does contain hundreds of other support craft. So there's a total of 4,200 fighters, TIE Conquerors and droid TIE fighters, and a total of 200 support craft that I didn't mention, but over 600 of the craft I did. That's 800 support craft. with those 4,200 fighters, 8 Katarn 6Cs, 2 Imperial 4s, and that's just for space warfare, because you can use the other gunships for that. There's also the ground units. There's several AT-ATs, several AT-TEs, AT-RTs, AT-STs, AT-PTs. There's multiple tanks. There's quite a few craft, basically, for ground assault. And it carries 50,000 ground troops. How does it do this? High-end automation and droids. Now, I did take from Star Trek for the antimatter, by the way. I'm also taking Star Trek Data. You know Data? Imagine that. Only there's thousands of them as crew on just one of these ships. Biological crew, 10,000. Can run with a minimum of 2,000. Android crew, the Data crew, well, there's a few of them. But the heavy automation allows for a minimum of 2,000 biologic crew and a mere 8,000 android crew to run the ship. Now that doesn't include the pilots, obviously, or the 50,000 ground troops. The ship is optimized to carry a gargantuan amount. Now, those ground troops, by the way, that's an emergency condition. The standard is only 5,000. How? The 50,000, they're basically sitting on the hangar floors, okay? And as you saw, the hangars are double-decked. That 50,000, they're sitting around the hangar floors. 5,000, they're just in their standard quarters. Oh, but they still have room in the hangar. You could actually hold 100,000, but they would be super crammed. But 50,000 is the max generally, with all the tanks and all that stuff. Yeah. Now, what was I saying about those reactors? Well, here's the thing. Everyone says that ships go through thousands of tons of fuel per second. That's pretty terrible. The ship here uses kyber crystals and other crystals with antimatter reactors, and it has its own hadron colliders and just generates its own power. It has 3 main reactors. 3 reactors. The 1 main one and 2 secondaries, rather. 3 antimatter reactors. It can pack quite a punch with those reactors. The hypermatter is less than 1/2 of 1% molecular efficiency. Antimatter is basically 100%. But the kyber crystals don't capture the energy. They enhance it. How does a lightsaber with just this little bitty battery, basically a D or a C battery or a little 9-volt, cut through metal and all that other stuff? The Force? Well, non-Force users have used it all the time. The kyber crystal enhances the energy output. The kyber crystal does the same thing with these reactors. You can have all systems running. The gravity will generate the ship at max speed, the high-end shields, and all the guns without any loss of power, no problem, including those big beam cannons, which do an insane amount of damage because standard weapon systems will impact enemy shields and then not go through it. The beam cannons will go through enemy shields. Continuous beams go through shields unless they're reinforced shields. And this thing has reinforced shields. So this ship is a dreadnought killer. It's designed to slaughter dreadnoughts. Now, super dreadnoughts like Super Star Destroyers, Executor, Eclipse, Assertor, and Titans like the Mega Class, it can beat them. Without using tactics, it can beat them. One tactic it can use its cloaking device, and using the mass drivers, the rotaries, the dual cannons, the concussion missiles, the other concussion missiles, the hypervelocity guns, firing while the ship is cloaked, including the proton torpedoes, forgot to mention that. It can fire them while the ship's cloaked without interfering. In fact, you'll see the weapons suddenly, but you won't see where they come from. Well, you can track them, I suppose. So, go up next to a ship, shoot its engines while you're cloaked, and just let gravity do the rest. But just in a straight-up fight, with the Super Star Destroyer having the best chance of success, it'll die to a Paltek 2. And that's with them not touching their fighters or support craft. The Executor is said in Legends to have 250 fighters. This thing has 4,200. And the Executor has a bunch of turbo lasers and basically nothing to shoot at enemy fighters. Well, this thing has over 1,500 laser cannons. I stopped counting once I reached 1,540. I give up. I just said it's over 1,500, but yeah, there's like 1,540 or something like that. You can count it if you count one by one and just change the color. So yeah, the gray areas there, and around there, and that gray that goes around, the gray that goes around on there, the black line that's on there, that, and the color over there, that's all supposed to be colored. The blue, the red, and the guns being colored differently are not. That is supposed to all be white, like the, or gray rather, the Imperial gray, white, yeah. That's just for the sake of if someone wants to put this in Empire War, or for the sake, well, and rather, for the sake of easy color coding of weapons so you can see what's where from a distance instead of having to go up and look at it and see what the gun is. Yeah. The thing's bristling with guns. So yeah, if it is cloaked, by the way, not only can it fire all those weapons while cloaked, it can launch fighters, the Katarns, and have the gravity well generator running. And the shields. But the energy weapons will interfere, including the continuous beam lasers. There is a berserker mode for the ship where all the power of the guns is transferred to the beam cannons. And those have two modes, continuous beam mode or saber mode. The continuous beam mode, it can cut an Imperial 2 right down the middle in about 1 second. Just bang. Saber mode, it's very short ranged. Each saber would be about 6,000 meters long. But it can go from front to back of an Executor in about 7 seconds. Now that's with the ship flying forward, by the way. Basically, the saber just holds its position, and you just set the ship at a speed, and in 7 seconds, it can cut through an Executor. Now, the Mega class that Snoke has, it can actually cut the wings off because there are two beam cannons. It can cut each of those wings off from front to back in about 12 seconds. Yeah. And Snoke's Mega stands no chance, even against one of these things. And the lore, those people that were super peaceful, finally gave up on being peaceful. They have over 1,000 of these ships. And each one of them easily capable of beating an Executor straight up fight, a Mega in a straight up fight. That's not even using tactics. But, no, that basically means any idiot knows to get to the side or the rear of a Super Star Destroyer with one of these, you win. Or just stay cloaked. Stay cloaked and smash them with all your projectile weapons and launcher weapons. Activate the Berserker mode. There's any number of things you can do. The Berserker mode only lasts for 1 minute, by the way. And it does reduce the ship speed by half for about 3 minutes afterwards. And you cannot use the beam cannons for about 5 minutes while they're cooling down. But this is a standard, not a flagship. A flagship version, 3 octuplets on the bottom, 2 more beam cannons, and the Berserker mode, after firing, you can fire the beam cannons in beam mode almost immediately afterwards, instead of having to wait 5 minutes. So, yeah. There's a lot more lore I would love to put in, but I want this video to not be too long, so I will catch you all later. Ciao. Alright. I'm going to add this little bit on. I've already done the other stuff. I'm adding some on so you can help understand 3 critical systems. The reactor, the shields, and the cloaking device. If you recall Star Wars The Clone Wars, you remember there is a cloaking device in it. The cloaking device in Star Wars The Clone Wars is, it's effective at cloaking a ship, but you can't fire weapons. The cloaking device on this thing, you can. fire weapons while it's cloaked. If they're projectile launchers, so mass drivers, hypervelocity guns, missiles, torpedoes, can be fired. And in case you're wondering, this hole here is just an easy way to get to the bridge for people who play Space Engineers. So yeah. That hole is not supposed to be there. Forgot to mention that. My bad. Nobody's perfect. That really should be in a lot more, but oh well. That should be actually basically flat or maybe one block out, but you know, Space Engineers limitations. Bear that in mind. Alright. So yeah. That's a lot of turbo lasers on the back end. So yeah, the cloaking device allows you to fire things like the concussion missiles that are up here, the mass drivers that are here. You see the two rotaries and the one dual. These big missiles, the hypervelocity guns at the front, and the giant torpedo launchers, which one of them's right there. So right there, alright? So that's the easy one. Now for the two harder ones. The reactor and the shields. How is this thing able to beat something so much bigger than itself? Listen, alright? And bear with me. I'm going into Legends a bit, but it'll make sense. I will speak so it makes sense. First, the reactor. Everyone knows that Star Wars uses hypermatter reactors. Now, what is hypermatter? Hypermatter is a substance pulled out of hyperspace, and it's used to power hyperdrives and hypermatter annihilator reactors. So, well, we don't actually know what it is. However, hang on, let me just look it up, because I forgot to do this. Power output peak 3.6 times 10 to the 24. Well, I can do that. If this is accurate. 3.6 times 10 is easy, that's 36. To the 24th power. Alright. So, from what I could find, the Venator, you know, the Venator has 40,000 tons of hypermatter fuel per second. 40,000 tons. Producing a maximum of 3.6 times 10 to the 24 watts of power. Which is 3.6 times 10 to the 21 kilowatts, or to the 18 megawatts, or the 15 gigawatts. Yeah, that's a lot of power. However, Zara Bomba produced almost the same amount in a little bit, and that in a little bit. You know, it's not completely, but yeah, 40,000 tons of fuel per second. That's bit of a problem. Sorry. Think. The ship has 20,000 tons worth of cargo and uses 40,000 tons of fuel every single second. How does that make sense? Hypermatter is pulled out of hyperspace and is not that dense. It's basically, this is my guess, but basically it's like kind of a lot like a like hydrogen, basically, but they pull it out of a little something called hyperspace. And so it's pulled out of hyperspace. Yeah, okay, fine. Alright, so they pull hypermatter out of hyperspace to use it. So hypermatter is in hyperspace. So it's incredibly abundant. It's easy to obtain, and it's free. All right, so why not use it? But 40,000 tons per second to create 3.6 times 10 to the 24. If you were to knock off some zeros, it'd be 3.6 times 10 to the 19, which is still a really, really big number. That's 19 zeros. So that's 36 followed by 18 zeros. That's, let's see, 100,000, million, billion, trillion, quadrillion. 3,600 quadrillion. What's the number above quadrillion? Or there's trillion, quadrillion, then the next one. I forget what that is. Well, there's trillion. So 36 million trillion watts of power. 36 million trillion watts of power. Here's the problem. That's a lot of fuel to obtain in a short amount of time. Right, so I did some math, and basically 40,000 tons of hypermatter to produce that amount of power, 3.6 times 10 to the 24 watts, because 1 watt equals 1 joule, it basically comes to around, a kiloton is about 4 trillion joules. A megaton is about 4,000 trillion, or 4 million billion joules of energy. So 40,000 tons of hypermatter comes to around about 100 million tons of TNT. So that means that 40 is only 100 kilotons. 40 tons of the stuff. It's easy math from here. Which I did not do that part, I did the rest, and like, yay! Oop. So what that means is, for every pound of hypermatter has about 12.5 joules of energy, okay? About 12.5 joules of energy in a single pound of hypermatter. Why is that important? Well, 12 joules per pound, or no, I think I messed up somewhere, because 12 joules per pound, no, that's 40,000 tons, so yeah, that's 80 million pounds. 80 million pounds equals about 100 megatons, or no, not 100 megatons. Oh yeah, it is 100 megatons. I think I messed up somewhere. So 80 million pounds, 100 megatons, 100 million tons. So that would mean 8 million pounds is 10 megatons. 800,000, 4,000. I messed up somewhere in my math. I apologize. But think of this. From what I could, a pound of gasoline in joules is 2.2 times 10 to the 7. All right, remember, hypermatter 3.6 times 10 to the 24 for 40,000 tons. 80 million pounds. It just hang on. Okay, found it. I finally did it. It's 2.5. 2.5 times 10 to the 2. 2,500 pounds of TNT is equal to the amount of is equal to a single pound. So 2,500 pounds of TNT equals 1 pound of hypermatter. Alright, so what I could find is about 2.5 million joules of energy equals a single pound of TNT. If that's accurate. So 2.5 million joules of energy equals a single pound of TNT. And 2,500 pounds of TNT equals a single pound of hypermatter. So, basically, that's what, just over 6 billion? About 6 billion joules of energy for a single pound of TNT. But that's still only 2,500 pounds of TNT. Why is that important? Diesel again. Diesel, a pound of gasoline, 2.2 times 10 to the 7. About 6 billion pounds. Or 6 billion joules of energy. 6 billion joules for 1 pound. That would be 6.0 times 10 to the 9? Yeah. 6.0 times 10 to the 9 would be a single pound of antimatter. And gasoline is 2.2 times 10 to the 7. It's only 100 times less. So hypermatter is 100 times better than gasoline. But a single pound of uranium is 3.7 times 10 to the 13. It's about 10,000 times better for a single pound of uranium. And actually, coal, no, that's a ton of coal, not a pound of coal. That's a ton of coal. Whoops. So, a pound of gasoline is 2.2 times 10 to the 7. A pound of hypermatter is 2.2 times 10 to the 9 in terms of joules. But the best I could find for a single pound of antimatter, the best I could find says it would be around 6 times 10, or excuse me, not 6, it's 1.2 times 10, not 6, I forgot that other bit. It, for antimatter is 1.2 times 10 to the 19, alright? Hypermatter, about 6.0 times 10 to the 9. Antimatter, 1.2 times 10 to the 19. It has about a billion times more energy in a single pound. Which means if you had 1 pound of antimatter, excuse me, not 1 pound of antimatter, a pound of antimatter, or 12, really 5 pounds of antimatter. About 5 pounds of antimatter because of the 1.2 versus the 6. About 5 pounds of antimatter would be more than 5 billion. Actually, is it 5? It's 50, isn't it? I'm sorry, I'm not too good with big numbers like that. I'm not a calculus guy. Is our 5 billion or 50 billion pounds? I think it's 50. And remember, the Venator uses 80 million pounds of hypermatter per second. So even if it is 5 billion pounds instead of 50 billion, that's 50 billion pounds. That's almost 1,000 times more energy for just a few pounds. So now, basically, if you have the ability to create 500 pounds of antimatter every single second if absolutely need be from the main reactor, and 100 pounds of antimatter per second from each of the 2 secondary reactors, even if you cut that in half. Then throw in the kyber crystal, which takes the power and amplifies by 5 or more. Why? A little bitty power cell can power a little bitty blaster pistol. Yeah, okay. Throw in a kyber crystal and it turns it into a lightsaber. And what do lightsabers do that little blaster pistols cannot? Cut through anything, more or less? Look. 500 pounds of antimatter created per second from the main reactor. Even a tenth of that, 50 pounds of antimatter per second, would be equivalent energy of 3,000 Venators. So there is no comparison between the two as far as the reactor is concerned. So that's how you get that. Throw in the kyber crystal to further increase it, alright? So I'm sorry that I gave you a lot of confusion. I'm sorry, but basically antimatter is billions of times more energy per pound than hypermatter. But hypermatter is insanely readily available, very easy to get, and it's free. So yeah. Antimatter, you need special stuff to do it. And you need, yeah, basically the way the reactor is set up, it's about 99.9 to the 10th 10 nines after that one. So 99.9 and 10 more percentage efficient on how much energy it gets out of it. Theoretically 100%. And it creates 500 pounds of antimatter per second. And then it has kyber crystals which increase the power by more than 10-fold. And that's the main reactor. It still has those 2 small reactors at 100 pounds of antimatter each per second. Just one of those on half would be enough to run most of the systems on the ship, no problem. Now, the shields. This is going to be a lot easier, because I'll give you a lot easier stuff. Alright, follow this. If you remember Return of the Jedi, a couple of A-Wings are shooting at the Executor's shield generator. They shoot at it and don't seem to do any damage. One of them fires a concussion missile, and that blows the whole shield generator up. And we do hear how shields don't really seem to do too much on ships unless they're really strong shields. They can reduce a lot of incoming laser fire, but they don't seem to do much against missiles. Now, why don't people use missiles? Because missiles are expensive and they take up a lot of room, where a laser is just compressed gas superheated. So you can basically just keep firing. If you have a reactor core, as long as you have enough gas, you can keep firing. And, well, okay. Now, what about so, well, now using that, magnetic shields, deflector shields will stop laser fire, or if you're going through hyperspace, it'll stop dust. But from what we've seen in Return of the Jedi, it does not stop missiles from an A-Wing. And other things suggest that it doesn't stop other projectiles either. Projectiles can get through shields because they're deflector shields and magnetic shields. But there is a shield called thermobaric. Going back to where the cloaked ship is with Anakin Skywalker during the Clone Wars animated TV show, he used that cloaked ship against Admiral Trench. Why is that important? Admiral Trench had a ship with thermobaric shields. That did stop proton torpedoes. But he had thermobaric shields, which are specialized shields. Now, this ship is equipped with reinforced shields. Because, now I know what you're saying, well, hold on, can't ships be stopped? Because we see in Rogue One, a pair of Star Destroyers can't ram through a shield, but that's a planetary shield. It's around an entire planet, and it's really, really thick. You can see it easily. You can't see other shields. Planetary shields are incredibly strong and incredibly thick. But even that was kind of a little too much for them. However, a continuous beam going through deflector shields, magnetic shields, and even thermal barrack shields can work if it's strong enough. The Death Star of the same movie. Continuous beams do that. They need the power as well. The shield does eat a little of it. But continuous beam, it backs itself up. That's one of the reasons that turbo laser don't get through. But a ship flying through will. So deflector shields and magnetic shields, which almost all ships are equipped with, will not stop proton torpedoes, concussion missiles, mass drivers, hypervelocity guns, things like that. Now, on occasion, legends, they say a proton torpedo will get through a ship, but again, Admiral Trench mentioning he has thermal barrack shields, meaning no. But Admiral Trench couldn't fire while his shields are up. That's why these are reinforced shields. These shields not only stop projectile weapons and energy weapons, but also continuous beam lasers. Even from a Death Star. Here's the problem. What if you want to shoot your enemy? That's part of the reason they're so good. Reinforced shields allow you to fire with the shields up, without even affecting the shields. You can even launch fighters and all that with the shields up. Not a problem. So you can fire that massive array and take a super laser shot in return and just laugh and kill the enemy that shot it before they have time to recharge. If it's an eclipse or a Death Star firing at anti-continent and you manage to get out of the way of the second blast, because that thing can fire a lot more faster, a lot more quickly, that is, than an eclipse. So yeah, don't worry, I figured that out. Reinforced shields, very special shields that allow you to shoot out while they're up and doesn't allow anything in. Yet others can, which means that this thing is a lot more deadly, because the Empire has deflector shields and magnetic shields, not thermal barrack, because thermal barrack are expensive as hell, and the Empire built TIE fighters instead of giving anything shields, so pfft. And how many projectile weapons does this thing have again? Is that answer, I don't know, a lot? Mass drivers especially, and hypervelocity guns. Yep. So what, by the way, what is a mass driver? Like I said, these are basically 20 millimeters that fire at about 30 bullets per second. Not quite as fast as Dylan Gatling, but they fire about, actually no, it's a little more than 30. These, and that one there as well, is supposed to be the same, 2,000 bullets per minute. Now this is supposed to be a 6-inch gun, about 155 millimeters, dual barreled. And this and that are supposed to fire 10% the speed of light per shot, where those two will fire 2,000 rounds a minute, but in short bursts, so a few seconds apiece, and then they stop for a few seconds, then fire a few seconds. They can do like several bursts per minute. This fires a shot, and it has to reload. And it takes it 5 seconds to reload per barrel. But it has 2 barrels, so 2.5 overall. The hypervelocity gun takes a lot longer to reload. But what is this thing? Well, if you would play the video game Halo 2 and go on to one of the first levels, and you notice a Super Mac gun has a giant shell. I think it is the first level of the game, actually. If you take a look at that giant shell, now double it. Double the diameter, double the length. That's basically a hypervelocity gun. And it fires 8 shots in a burst. Or 8 or 9. I think it's 9, actually. It's 8 or 9. So, and instead of 10% the speed of light, it's closer to 15-20% the speed of light. So it's way bigger, and it's traveling much faster. Energy equals mass times acceleration. If you have a 20 millimeter round compared to a 155 millimeter round, traveling at 10% the speed of light. So the speed is the same, but one is 20 millimeters across, maybe, let's just assume a pound. 1 pound of steel, or maybe 2 pounds. Let's just assume 1. And the other one would be about 25 pounds. The one should have about 25 times more energy because it's 25 times heavier. Now take something that's like 15 feet long and about 2 feet across. That's going to weigh a couple of tons, and you increase its speed drastically. 15% of speed line instead of 10%. It's going to hurt like hell. By the way, Admiral Trench's thermobaric shields, I don't think they'd be able to stop this firepower for very long at all. If at all, period. So that's my explanation for the shields and the reactor. Antimatter, 1 billion times more energy in a single pound than in hypermatter. And the shields on this reinforce, which stop anything. Alright, I'll catch you later. I gotta upload this.